Neutral-toned abstract wooden wall pieces don't exist to be loud. They don't need bold colors, heavy finishes, or intricate patterns to make an impression. They work because they are quiet, panels, shapes, and layers in warm wood tones, arranged so they bring rhythm to a wall without overpowering the room. They're not about shouting for the eye. They're about making a space feel settled, balanced, and whole. Most of these pieces start with tone, not form. The wood itself carries the palette: pale maple, light oak, soft ash, deeper walnut, or reclaimed planks that still show muted weathering from another life. These natural colors hold a warmth that doesn't clash with anything around them. They blend, soften, and anchor. There's no bright stain, no high-gloss lacquer, no artificial color pulling the eye away. The grain, the soft finish, the natural spectrum of tans, browns, and creams, that's the language these pieces speak. The designs themselves lean abstract, but with control. Some are built from long, horizontal slats, layered or staggered, so the wall gains a subtle sense of depth, the kind that changes with the light. Others use geometric forms, hexagons, triangles, rectangles, arranged in patterns that feel ordered but not rigid, as though they are holding still for now but could shift at any moment. Some pieces use curves, arcs, or flowing cutouts, adding a gentle movement that balances the sharper lines of modern interiors. Texture is as important as shape. Even when the designs are simple, the wood surface carries variation. One section may be sanded perfectly smooth, the grain glowing under a light oil. Another might be brushed so the softer fibers recede, leaving a faint texture you can feel. Some makers carve shallow grooves or reliefs into the panels, not to create bold patterns, but to break up the surface just enough for shadows to fall differently across the piece. These quiet details make the artwork feel alive without pulling the room's focus. Depth plays a role, too. Many neutral-toned wall pieces aren't flat. Panels are offset from each other, or mounted slightly off the wall so they cast their own shadows. Some use layered frames, with shapes stepping forward or receding, so the piece holds the eye for a moment before it disappears back into the room's calm. None of it feels heavy-handed. The depth is there to soften the flatness of a wall, not to make a statement for its own sake. The finishes stay restrained. Oils and matte sealers protect the wood and bring out the grain without gloss. Occasionally, two tones are paired, a pale oak against a richer walnut, or a light ash beside a deeper, weathered piece, but even then, the contrast is soft. These aren't artworks built to pop. They are built to settle, to give the room a center without demanding attention. What they bring to a room is less about sight and more about presence. On a bare wall, they break up the emptiness without filling it. In a modern space, they soften the sharper edges of glass, metal, and stone. In more natural interiors, they blend with existing textures, feeling like part of the architecture rather than an afterthought. They make a room feel finished, not busy. The process of making them is deliberate but quiet. Each piece of wood is cut, sanded, and joined carefully, but the craftsmanship hides itself. The joinery is invisible. The edges are softened just enough to keep the piece approachable. The finish is applied by hand, slowly, so the surface feels warm rather than sealed. The result doesn't look manufactured. It looks like something that belongs, as though it might have been there all along. Once they are hung, these wall pieces don't demand constant attention. You see them when you walk into the room, but you don't feel the need to stare. They become part of the atmosphere, something you notice when the light shifts, or when the shadows stretch across their surfaces in the late afternoon. Their presence grows quieter with time, which is why they never feel dated or overwhelming. They hold their place because they aren't trying to hold you. And when night comes, when the room dims and the lights cast softer glows across the walls, these wooden pieces transform again. The grain deepens. The layers cast longer, gentler shadows. The pale woods catch the light, the darker ones fade back, and the whole composition feels deeper, calmer, almost like it's breathing along with the space. They don't vanish into the dark, but they don't fight it, either. They settle into it, holding their shapes softly, like a steady line of thought in a quiet room. It's in those moments, when the noise fades, the light lowers, and the house feels still, that these neutral-toned abstract wooden wall pieces reveal what they are built for. They don't shout. They don't chase your attention. They just hold the wall with quiet weight, adding warmth and rhythm to the space without disturbing its calm. They make the room feel complete, not because they dominate it, but because they know how to disappear into it while still being undeniably present. Neutral-toned abstract wooden wall pieces have a quiet, steady presence that doesn't clamor for attention yet somehow shapes the entire atmosphere of a room. They don't rely on bold colors or busy patterns to stand out. Instead, They lean into the understated beauty of wood's natural tones, its textures, and the gentle play of light and shadow across their surfaces. They sit somewhere between art and architecture, offering something you notice not because it shouts, but because it feels like it belongs, as if the wall itself has been given a subtle pulse, a sense of depth and life without ever breaking the calm of the space around it. When you first see one, it doesn't necessarily pull your gaze like a vivid painting might. Instead, you feel it before you study it. The soft browns, warm beiges, honeyed tans, and muted grays of the wood settle the eye, making the wall feel grounded. These tones, drawn from the natural palette of timber rather than artificial pigments, create a harmony with almost any interior, whether the room is dressed in stark white, deep earth tones, or cool modern grays. The neutrality isn't a lack of personality. It's a choice that allows the piece to shape a mood without overwhelming it. The forms themselves tend to be abstract, but not chaotic. Smooth curves, overlapping layers, subtle geometric shapes, or flowing lines carved just deep enough to create dimension, the designs feel intentional without being rigid. Some pieces are made of wide, gently curved panels that seem to float a few centimeters from the wall, catching light along their edges. Others rely on patterns of narrow slats, angled or offset, so that as you move through the room the light shifts across them, casting soft stripes of shadow. Still others use a combination of recessed cuts and raised planes, creating a relief that you can only fully appreciate when you step closer, when you trace the play of light across every rise and fall. What ties them together is how they work with light. In bright daylight, their surfaces glow gently, the tones warming and the wood grain revealing itself in detail, fine lines, subtle swirls, quiet shifts from heartwood to sapwood. As evening falls and the room's artificial lighting takes over, the pieces change character. Soft shadows stretch across the recessed cuts. The raised areas pick up a delicate glow from nearby lamps. A piece that felt airy and open in daylight can feel intimate and cocooning at night, its depth more pronounced, its forms more sculptural. The neutrality of the tones makes this transformation feel seamless, as if the artwork has multiple moods built into it, each revealed by the time of day. Up close, the details are where the wood really comes alive. The grain is never an afterthought. It might run in calm, linear paths that echo the minimal lines of the piece, or it might swell softly, a natural counterpoint to the precision of the carved or arranged shapes. In some designs, multiple types of wood are used, but always within the same restrained palette, perhaps a panel of pale ash alongside strips of warmer oak, or a foundation of soft gray-stained maple accented by darker walnut details. These variations don't feel jarring. They create layers of tone and texture that add depth without breaking the overall calm. The finish is almost always matte or satin, never glossy. High shine would break the subtlety, turning the surface into a mirror of reflections rather than a field of texture. Instead, the finish lets the wood feel touchable, warm, and natural. Some pieces even leave portions of the grain more open, where you can feel the slight texture under your fingertips if you run your hand across it, while other areas are smoothed to a silk-like softness, creating a quiet contrast you can only appreciate up close. These details invite engagement, not loudly, but as a quiet discovery. Scale changes the effect, but never the tone. A smaller, neutral-toned wall piece might hover over a desk, a bed, or in a hallway, becoming a moment of calm that draws the eye gently as you pass by. A larger installation, spanning a living room or dining room wall, doesn't simply decorate the space, it anchors it. It gives the wall a texture, a rhythm, a sense of presence that turns an otherwise empty surface into something you can feel, not just see. Even in their largest forms, these pieces avoid feeling heavy or overbearing, precisely because their colors and shapes are restrained. They add life without adding noise. Over time, the wood itself continues to evolve, even when sealed. Neutral tones shift subtly with age, deepening, warming, settling into richer hues. A pale oak may develop a slightly golden undertone. A soft gray-stained ash might mellow into something closer to driftwood, its highlights and shadows becoming gentler. These natural changes add character without ever disturbing the harmony of the piece. The wall art doesn't stay frozen. It grows, subtly, alongside the life happening in the room, gaining a patina that makes it feel even more like a permanent, organic part of the space. Part of what makes these neutral-toned abstract wooden wall pieces so effective is their ability to work with different styles without losing their essence. In a minimalist room, they provide texture and depth, keeping the space from feeling sterile or overly flat. In a rustic or nature-inspired interior, they echo the tones of other natural materials, tying the space together without adding clutter. In a contemporary or industrial setting, they soften the harder edges of concrete, glass, or metal, bringing a touch of warmth and tactility that keeps the room from feeling cold. Their neutrality makes them adaptable, but their materiality, the fact that they are wood, alive with grain and texture, keeps them from ever feeling generic. They also have a way of changing how people move through a room. You don't just glance and move on. You tend to slow down near them, to notice how the shadows shift as you walk past, to trace the grain with your eyes, to stand a little longer than you intended. They don't demand that you interpret them. They don't present a fixed image to be understood. They exist more as a presence, a quiet rhythm on the wall that makes the room feel more grounded, more complete, without pulling you out of the moment. When lit thoughtfully, whether by a nearby window, a hidden LED strip casting a soft glow, or a single spotlight angled just so, these pieces can become something more than decoration. They can become the reason a space feels calm, balanced, and finished. The light doesn't just hit them, it interacts with them, tracing their contours, amplifying their textures, turning their neutral palette into something dynamic without ever losing the sense of restraint. The result is art that feels alive but never overwhelming, art that supports the mood of a room rather than competing with it. And maybe that's what makes them resonate so strongly. In a world filled with bold designs and loud statements, these pieces remind us that subtlety can be powerful. They show that neutral doesn't mean lifeless, and that abstract doesn't have to mean chaotic. Through careful shaping, the warmth of natural materials, and a design language built on balance and light, they become something more than objects on a wall. They become quiet companions to the spaces they inhabit, shaping how those spaces feel, changing with the hours, and settling deeper into the life of the room as the years pass.